everyone. It's Ryan from the Rocky Mountain Cigar Show here, back in the Smokin' Studios for another live Thursday night episode. We have the man, the myth, the legend himself, Steve Saka, and I know he loves these over-exhausting, bloviating intros, so let me just keep going for a little bit longer. I see the smile on his face. He's getting all a little blushy. Uh... But everybody, we all know who Steve is. If you're an active viewer of this show or pretty much any other cigar podcast, you know who Steve Saka is. Now, before we bring Steve on, just some show maintenance. Please, everybody, bear with me. I'm still waiting on some of the stuff from the birthday giveaway. This is one of the things that I love so much about Steve is he sends everything in one shot. And I'm still waiting on some cigars from La Aurora to come in. Don't worry, I've got my limit before I'm just gonna say fuck it and send out everything in sections and groups and everything else. There's only a couple of you left, so please continue to bear with me. I really, really appreciate that as well. So, thank you again to everybody coming on. Let's see who we have joining us tonight. We got Tony, Richard, Chris. That's an incredible cigar that Steve was able to make for you. We've got Brent, Jeff, Tony, Derek, Mike. Thank you so much for everybody joining us tonight. So, without any other further ado, let's go ahead and bring in the man of the hour. Really, the only one that anybody comes here to see. How you doing, Steve?
Look at that, I'm in the Rocky Mountains.
Right? So Steve actually helped me find out. It's a weird cutout, but I actually like it, to be honest with you. Let me know.
I feel like a floating head.
I
What was that? What was that? What was that? There was a TV show that used to have like the floating head that was like some sort of like either an alien or a god or a genie. What was that show? Where it was like just a big floating head with the turret.
I think there was Power Rangers had something like that.
No, I was too old for Power Rangers. This is back when I was a kid. What was that show? I need another old dude to chime in on that one. But there was something where you were just like, he was like floating out and say, look how weird my hands are.
Well, Steve helped me find out that there's really no way to throw up a green screen, and Steve uses the green screen for his interviews. Yeah. So we just did a chroma key, and fortunately, he's got a really good green screen and camera. And now we just got him floating out there in the Rocky Mountains. So, but hey, I can tell you right now, there's probably a few places that Steve would rather be than a cabin in the mountains with a fishing pole.
I would like that. I don't know, wherever this mystical place is, it looks pretty damn nice.
It is actually Colorado. When I searched for the picture, I made sure it was in Colorado. But it was so long ago, I forgot where it was. But I tell you, before we kind of dive into what we're doing tonight, let's go to your segment. In fact, the only segment of the show that I even have, and that is the What Are You Smoking Tonight part of the show, sponsored by, well, Steve. So thank you, Steve. So tell us, everybody, what you are smoking tonight.
So I got a couple questions. I was seeing the comments and now they've disappeared. I didn't do anything.
Nope.
Did you do something?
Nope. That's because I don't have them on this.
Ah, got it.
I have them on a different screen that's not this screen.
All right.
You'll see them when they change.
Whatever you're saying. So if you want to like motherfuck me, this is the time to do it.
He'll be able to read those comments the second he gets back. So what are you smoking tonight, Steve?
I am smoking. I'm smoking a Saka Khan. I've been trying to smoke it for like the last 3 hours, but I've been working on tractors today, so every time I go to light it, I have to put it down, and I don't even know why I tried. Probably should have tossed it, but I don't know. It just seems so wasteful to throw it away. And it's also, with most of these heavier Maduro kind of heavy blends, they're not all prissy and sensitive to that kind of relight kind of stuff. Mild blends, all that. Oh, I got to purge it. Oh, you shouldn't relight it. Oh, you shouldn't, all that nonsense. First off, a lot of it I do think is nonsense, but it definitely has far less impact when you're smoking a heavy cigar. I mean, it's already kind of semi nasty to begin with, right? So,
Well, tonight I've got a new slide style. Let everybody, let me know if you think it's a little too much, or Steve, let me know if you think it's a little too much. So this is what I'm going to start doing for my segment. So tonight I have the
look at this.
Moisture de Saka Bewitched. It's a Nicaraguan country. It's from the Hoyo de Nicaragua factory. And it's an Ecuadorian Habano wrapper, Mexican binder. I have no idea how to say that, Steve. Coltivo? Tanto?
Cultivo. Yeah, no, Cultivo.
Coltivo? Tanto?
Yeah, Tonto, just like, Ranger and Tondo. The Lone
Okay.
Ranger, Tonto, yeah.
So Coltiva, Tanto, Sandres Negro, obviously, Maduro. Nicaraguan and USA filler. 6 and 5/8, 48 ring gauge, Toro Extra, released in
Price it wrong.
2022. Well,
Yeah.
this is off of the date that came out.
Yeah, because those suckers I think are like $2 more now.
Yes, this is just something I kind of pulled in to help me, so I'm not so reliant on everybody else to come in and explain what I'm smoking. So just always try to better the show, right?
You know what's weird about the word Tonto is it's kind of a slang word that means crazy. So I wonder when the creators of the Lone Ranger and they were naming Tonto the Indian, if they knew that it was a little bit of a slur when they named him Tonto.
Really?
Yeah.
So Coltivo Tanto San Andres, is that a varietal of San Andres?
It's what the. So when I explained to the farmer what I wanted to do with the Negro that we grow for Sin Compromiso, he said that's crazy because it's Cultivo Tonto. It's crazy farming. It makes no sense. Why would we do that? So he called it Cultivo Tonto. Just spur of the moment, not some official name. It was just the farmer telling me I was an idiot. And I told him I was going to pay him. And then, you know what? When you pay someone to do stupid things, they're willing to do them.
No, absolutely. I mean, everybody's always got a price, right? You know that. As a business guy, there's always a price to everything.
Well, for him, it wasn't that. He thinks it's wasteful, is his opinion, right? So he just finds it wasteful what we do, and that's why it's crazy. Why would we throw away so much of the tobacco? So, look, I can understand. He's a farmer. He sells things by weight. Everything's based on yield. So everything he has ever done his entire life has been, how do I get the most weight out of, in his case, a hectare, but let's just call it an acre, out of an acre of, an acre of land. And what I'm basically saying is I want you to grow it this way, which is going to end up basically giving him, in the end, we get about 34 to 36% the same weight than if he grew it the normal way. So if he grew it the normal way, he would literally end up with almost 3 times more tobacco than the way we grow it for the Sin Compromiso. So what you see is you'll see that I have a lot of brands that use that Cultivo Tonto binder because whatever doesn't make the greatest wrapper, I have to have a place to put because I paid such an absurd amount of money for it. Because I'm basically paying wrapper cost at a third the weight for production. Sure. So you'll find a lot of my brands have this. And some of the brands have them come in and out. So ones that are dedicated Cultivo Tonto, we list that this is Cultivo Tonto San Andres Negro. But there's other ones where just regular Mi Queridas, where it's the San Andres Negro wrapper. Sometimes it's Cultivo Tonto, sometimes it's not, right? Because I need to, if I have enough Cultivo Tonto, I try to use a Cultivo Tonto on the ones that are, the Muestras and the specialty products, the Rita Black. I mean, it's a little sweeter. It's a touch better. So if it's really critical to the blend, But sometimes some Cultivo Tanto will slip into one of the other ones that's just listed as San Andreas Negro. Because it's still San Andreas Negro. It's not a different seed. It's not grown in a different place. It's just harvested in a different way.
Okay. Well, I can tell you, I really enjoy the Moisture de Sacas. I think I've had the fortunate ability to have at least one of all that are been made
Mm-hmm.
so far. And I'm not gonna lie, man, the Now Leave Me the Hell Alone is my favorite.
It's some people's favorite. My favorite's Naka Tamale.
Yeah, I know that. I know that. I thought I actually had one of those, but I did not.
That's the one that I like the most. Um, but and then what's my second? That's hard. Maybe it's either Bewitched or it's Unstolen Valor. I think. I mean, honestly, for me, the Now Leave Me Alone is it's last place for me.
But you're also not a Lancero guy.
Yeah, I'm not.
Were you ever?
Nah. For one, like back when I was like in my Uber, like we all go through these cigar geek phases, and I got sucked into the Lancero vortex for probably a year or two, and I thought I was a Lancero guy, and then I kind of realized that why am I smoking this? I don't enjoy as much. So am I just trying to make the other cigar geeks think I'm as worthy a cigar geek? And then I was like, you know what?
Mhm.
I'm not doing this anymore. So yeah. So I look. I got to remember. I'm 60 years old now, but I was like everybody else. I mean, I was 26 years old, 28 years old. I'm just starting to get really uber into cigars. I mean, I started smoking when I was 17. Well, I didn't really start smoking cigars until I was 19 because I was in the Navy and I was already attached to the ship is when I started like actually smoke cigars. I mean, some poker night cigars, the graduate out of boot camp cigar kind of cigars, those kind of cigars. But like really getting into smoking cigars was when I was about 19, but I couldn't afford much because I was in the Navy enlisted. So it was really 19, 23, 24. It's about when I was like 24, 25 when I started to like really get into cigars. And so there was some point, probably 5 or 6 years into that I was kind of more like Lancero positive. But it was a phase, like the Terrible Twos. I went through it, and I kind of got out of it pretty quick. I've always had the same attitude. I find them simplistic, and I just always feel as though a Lonsdale is just a more enjoyable smoke than a Lancero.
That's what I was gonna say. You
So
like
if I want something skinny, I would much rather smoke something that's in like a 43, 44 ring gauge than smoke something that's in a 38/40 ring gauge.
well, what is it? The 6x46 is your favorite size?
6x48.
6x48.
Anything 48 ring gauge, pretty much from 5 inches to 7 inches. So 5 inches to 7 inches, 48. 6x48 puts it dead center, but 5 and 5/8 is a very common size for me in 48. 7x48, I'll smoke those. So 48 ring gauge for me is just that's where for my own palate where I've settled. It's like it's the right amount of space so the blend can be complex enough. It's burns at a temperature that I find enjoyable. I find that I just find that 48s are just a really good balance point for me.
Well, I mean, I like that size too. I'm much more of like 55, 56 is really kind of my limit. 60's too much. Anything over 60, I feel like I should be paid to smoke it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, look,
and so
part of the problem is when you get into those 60 ring gauges and up, they're hard to get them to burn properly. So
mhm.
what ends up happening is you end up having to make the blends typically with a lot of mild materials. So those larger ring gauge cigars aren't very often popular with more experienced cigar smokers because they don't deliver the flavor profile that they want. because of the materials. There's very few like really true Gordos. Ernesto Perez Carrillo makes some. La Flor Dominicana makes with the Digger and his DL 600s and 700s. We have some with the Gran Buffalo and the 764 Tricky Traca, and we have the Gorilla Gorda coming out in Mickey Rita. But literally, I mean, there's probably thousands of 60 ring gauge plus cigars.
Mm-hmm.
I bet if you made a list of ones that are like really like rich and flavorful and robust, I doubt you could come up with 30, 35. You know what I mean? There's just most of them are on the mild side, and it's just a mechanics of how the tobacco burns. And there's also a question of also where the costs are, because you're going to start to use all those heavy materials in a large ring gauge cigar like that. Are the customers who smoke those cigars going to be willing to pay for those cigars?
Yep.
And the ones that are, they're between just the 30, 35 SKUs that are in the world out there. There's something there for them. You know what I mean? That are those customers that are going to pay for a DL 700, that's going to pay for a Mickey Rita Gran Buffalo, right? But most of those 60 ring consumers, they want to keep that cigar sub, $12, sub $10. I don't even know. But I mean, that's where you look at most of them. So they're packed with a lot of Seiko that typically the manufacturer is getting at a relatively discounted price, because people always need more heavy material, right, to make their blends more interesting. But the plant gives you more Seiko. So there's a lot more Seiko available than there is of the Viso and Ligero. So therefore, it was one of the early secrets of Drew Estate when we were doing all of the infused products, because you were making so many of those products out of Seiko, and it was perfectly good leaf. It's just mild, right? But it was really good when you were, infusing it, because you really didn't want an uber strong tobacco, because you were trying to get the flavor component to come through. So Drew Estate consumed an absurd amount of Seiko, which was really good for the farmers and really good for the leaf brokers, because when you buy stuff, you get to a certain scale, they're not going to let you just cherry pick. Oh, I just want the Ligero, I just want the Viso, I just want the 7th and 8th and 9th primings. No,
Sure.
Because the plant doesn't grow that way. You got to buy the whole damn crop, and then it's your job to go figure it out. But if you're a leaf broker and you have a customer like Drew Estate that's willing to take an absurd amount of Seiko, you can then say to that guy, okay, you don't want to buy the Seiko, but I'm going to have to charge you extra on the Viso and the Ligero. And the guy will go, okay, I'm going to pay more because these are the materials I need. Okay. And if I don't have to take the materials I don't need, I'd rather pay an extra, $2 a pound for what I do need and not take the other. And then as a result, we would end up getting that Seiko at a good value price, because the broker made extra money on the heavier materials.
And right, and that's kind of the trade-off to what you're saying is, it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't approach. If you want to look at it, there's a trade-off of buy the whole plant for a little bit less and figure something to do with what you can't use for what you need, or buy just what you want and have a little bit more up cost, and now
Which is
that
one of the
cigar kind of up
reasons why
costs.
so many of the Dunbarton products are in that $15 to $20 range, because that's what I'm doing at my scale. I'm having to cherry pick materials, and when you cherry pick materials, you have to pay more. I mean, if you're looking at a cow, you're saying, yeah, I want the cow, but I only want the porterhouse, I only want the prime rib, I only want the, if I only want the loin, then you get to pay more for the privilege of taking the best part of the cow and leaving the rest for somebody else. So, and that jacks up the price. And you can only get away with that so much. You get to a certain volume level, and even if you're willing to pay, you still can't do it anymore. So that's why I normally, I've said this many times before, but there's kind of like a wall where you get to about at our price point, it's about 15 million a year gross. When you get to about 15 million a year gross, it becomes very, very hard to keep cherry picking for your entire product mix. You can still cherry pick for this release or that release, but you can't cherry pick for your entire production. So it becomes very. It's why it's such a difficult profit area. But when you're that company that does 15 million in sales, and now you want to grow, that period between like 15 million and 40 million gross is really, really difficult, because now you're going to have to make a lot of products that you maybe not necessarily would want to make. And not only do you have to make them, you have to figure out how to sell them, and you have to market them, and you have to have sales teams, and you have to lay out the cash for them, and it's really difficult. So there's kind of a ceiling as to how many cigars you can make the way we make cigars. And I always say this to people. I say this to retailers. They get upset that La Florida Dominicana doesn't, supply more cigars. Why they always backward? Why they always backward? It's because I've never had this conversation with Lito. So this is just me supposing. This is me speculating. But Lito knows how it works just the same as I do. I think Lito's at a point that he sees that the next step is such an ugly step that he doesn't want to take the next step. Because the problem is, when you take that next step, you're essentially going to become a less profitable company, and you're going to end up doing 3 times more work. And the only reason you're taking that step is so that you can get to where you're a $40 million a year company, to get back to where you were when you were a $15 million company from a bottom line perspective. And the only reason you even did that is because you want to become an $85, $100 million company, right? So there's no reason to ever get beyond this certain this point. If your goal in your head isn't, okay, I want to be Altadis, I want to be STG, I want to be Drew Estate, I want to be Pepin Garcia, I want to be AJ Fernandez. If you're not thinking in those terms, and you're just saying, hey, I just want to make really, really good top tier cigars, you can't make really, really good just top tier cigars when you get into that price point. You have to make a much wider portfolio for a lot of different things. And look, and even I run into it. Look, I have some cigars that aren't top tier. Umbagog is not top tier. Popetta is not top tier. Now, are they very good cigars? Yeah, they're very good cigars, but they're not top tier. I'm gonna run into.
I'll say this. They're top. It's kind of like you have like a Toyota line, an Lexus line, and for what the price range of the Ummagog is, I would consider
For
it
what the
type
price
tier.
point is, it's a great cigar for
That's
the
what I
money.
mean. That's what I mean. Top tier in that
You
range.
can't put an Umbagog side by side with a Mikke Rita Black day in, day out. Now, will you get some Umbagogs that are just like, wow, just as good as a black? Sure. But sometimes the material just ends up that way. But the reality is, it's not the same caliber product. Look, and the consumer isn't paying for that, right?
It's
Saka
true.
Khan,
That's true.
Saka Khan is what? This is like a $19 cigar I'm smoking right now. An Umbagog is a $10 cigar, right? It's half the retail price. Now, is it half as good? No, but that's always been the case with handmade cigars. As you move up the price point, your return becomes less and less, right? It's the same thing with booze, right? There's a world of difference between the gut rot bottom end of the booze and then that next tier up and then the tier after that. But you get to a certain point, and then it becomes kind of a law of diminishing returns of, okay, can I really tell the difference between that $90 bottle of single malt and that $300 bottle of single malt? Is the delta so great that it's justified for 3 times the price? No, it isn't, right? So, but that's me saying that. For another consumer, another consumers go, yeah, I can definitely tell the difference. For me, it's worth $300. That's, I ran into a guy the other day. All he drinks is Macallan 25. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like, look, Macallan 25 is great, but what is that shit? It's like 1,700 a bottle, 1,800 a bottle if you can find it. I mean, that's craziness to me. I can't even wrap my brain around it.
So kind of to your point, and I'm pretty sure I've told this story on the show a couple of times, but I had a mentor of mine that had a really, really close to very high to low 6-figure bourbon Scotch collection.
Right.
And like his entry level bottle of what he actually put in his collection was in the 5 figures. If it wasn't in 5 figures, or I'm sorry, 4 figures
Okay.
minimum, then it wasn't in the collection. And
Wow.
I thought I was like top shit. I'm like, I got a bottle of 21 Glenlivet. I paid 175 for it.
Yeah.
And so I called him to tell him, and he goes, drink a little bit and call me back. So a couple of days go by, I give him a call back. He goes, why did you like it? And I said, well, it's this, this, this. He goes, you just described every scotch on the planet for the most part. But why did you like that over a Bavini bottle that's 50? Or the 12 that's the most popular Glenlivet bottle that's 36?
Right.
And I said, I don't know. And he goes, well, that's honesty, because I don't know why I like any of the ones I have either. I just like it because other people are going for it, and I decided to buy it first. So, but like that's his honesty for it. He goes, you could throw blind taste me at anything. I'm never gonna be able to pick out a bottle. I just like it because other people want it.
But, but let me say this. I think in the beginning on anything that you get into, that is how you start to. So, like, I mean, that's how I, in the beginning with cigars, right? I was chasing cigars that other people told me they really, really liked, right? Now I don't do that. I know what I like. I know the makers that I like. I know the type of tobaccos I like. I know the thing. And so to me, it becomes less of a benchmark. Whereas, 30 odd years ago, you'd have your top 25 CA list and you'd be looking and go, how many of those top 25 did have I had? I've only had 12 of them. So now I got to try the other 13, So, I mean, look, I've gone through that progression, and I think that's the case with booze. Look, the only time I ever get to try anything that's like crazy expensive is by the courtesy and the generosity of others, right? I have the luxury of, because by being in cigars and being in the cigar world, there's a lot of very crazy spirit people, right? Dwayne Poor is a perfect example. Dwayne Poor, he doesn't have a whiskey collection. He has a building he rents with a special room. Okay, for his whiskey collection. He has a spot where he drinks his whiskey, right? Dedicated for him and his friends. I mean, that's some serious, like, you're into booze, right? And he's got just thousands upon thousands of bottles, right? So I get the benefit of getting, sample drams from guys like him. Oh, Saka, I got this singleton, 48-year-old, yada yada yada, blah 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 blah, and I take it, and almost always they're right. The stuff is amazing, but then I always Google it, and I'm like, wow, $5,800 a bottle. I'm like, it's like literally, it's like what? That's like seven. It's like 8 times more than my first car, right? So,
All to get drunk.
yeah, but but this is something I learned a long time ago. You don't judge other people's money. Everybody spends money on things that they derive some sort of enjoyment out of, and oftentimes, what a person derives enjoyment out of, another person thinks that's crazy. I mean, people, when they hear how much we pay to smoke cigars, and they hear, oh wow, that thing's $15, that thing's $20, and you buy a whole box of it, and how many are you smoking? You're smoking 3 a day. They just look at you like you have 3 heads, because in their brain they're like, how the hell can this guy be spending $40 to $50 a day on handmade cigars? But for all you know, that person's a crazy coffee geek, right? They're watching all the coffee YouTube videos. They're chasing down beans from so and so. I mean, you see this in everything. You see it in the fragrance thing, right? There's like tons of YouTube channels on fragrance. There's all these crazy niche fragrances that cost $400 to $600 a bottle. Is a pretty common price for these perfumes, right? Like it's like the people that are in the fragrance world, they don't even think about it. Like, yeah, it's normal, right? Same thing. The knife collectors, right? Spending $400
Oh,
to $600 on a knife is like,
it's
that's
that's that's
pedestrian. That's
that's
like every
entry
day.
level,
Yeah, I mean, and you get these guys, and they literally,
especially chef's knife.
right, they're chasing, thousands and thousands of dollars knives, and they're, getting on wait lists, and they're waiting for 2 years to have the right to give some guy $3,000 so he can make them a knife that he gets another 2 years later, right? Does that knife cut better than a Spyderco? Maybe a hair, right? But not 5 years and thousands of dollars.
Well, here's the thing too. It's kind of like what it goes back to what you said. if I'm a classically trained chef of 20, 30 years, Japanese trained chef, sushi,
Well,
you're going to be
that's a
able
tour
to
of the
be
trade.
like, correct, you're going to be able to be like, that $700 knife, I can tell the difference between that $25 Costco knife.
Right. Not
But
only
like,
that, but there's joy in using something like that,
correct,
right?
correct, correct.
There's a satisfaction in having something that is so finely made and with so much attention to detail. So look, and this is what I'm getting back to is no matter what it is, somebody else thinks what you're spending your money on is insane,
Correct.
but they are probably spending money on something that you think is insane.
Correct. Regardless of how much it is or how little it
Right. Just
costs.
relative to what their income is, right?
Correct. Correct.
So yeah, I think that I learned a long time ago to never be to just never judge anybody else as well. It's their own damn business. You know what? They earn that money. They have the right to spend it however they wish. And look, and I'm the benefactor. I get some crazy drams courtesy of friends that give me some samples of stuff that I'm like, wow, that's really amazing. And I'm really glad to have had the luxury of trying it, understanding that I will never get to try it ever again because I'm never going to spend the money.
Yeah, Kevin comes in classic Steve fashion with the snicker
But
symbol.
he's absolutely right, though. A $300 cigar cutter, it's in the same thing. Look, it's a beautifully it's a beautiful piece of machine
Yes.
kit.
It's gorgeous.
I mean, it has a certain feel and a weight, and there's a certain every time you use it, you appreciate it, right? It's something to be appreciated. But in the end, it's crazy. I know it's crazy. We all know it's crazy. A DuPont lighter is crazy. An LE Blue humidor is crazy. I mean, a Ziploc baggie with a Bovida pack in it works just as good as a $5,000 LE Blue humidor. In fact, I might even argue it might work a little better in some cases. So, I mean, yeah, it's like, come on, let's get real. I mean, I'm into watches.
Yeah,
Look, your phone keeps way better time than any watch you could ever have. Heck, your digital Casio keeps better time than any of these fancy Vacheron Constantine or Audemars Piguet or any of those watches, right? It's not what you're buying. You're buying something else. And
correct.
part of it is you are buying a certain amount of status. You're buying a certain amount of flex.
Hmm.
For certain consumers, well, that's what all luxury branding is about, right? But there is a difference. There's a difference between my $400 Seiko and my $10,000 Rolex. Now, is there a $9,600 difference? Not really. You know what I mean? I mean, there's not. And so, yeah, I just think it's what we as consumers do. We consume. And
Yeah, it's true.
as
It's
long as
true.
you have the money and you're not putting on your credit card and financing away your future, you're not taking food out of your kids' mouths, and you're covering all your needs, right? And you treat your want money as want money and you have it, then what's the point of working
One of the
if you're not going
things
to spend it to enjoy it?
I agree, and one of the things that I've witnessed this a couple of times from you for a few different people. Um, your big buyers. Your customers. I feel like at any event that I see you at, the guys that spend
I
a
do and
lot
I
of money
don't. I
with you.
mean, I know the
Well,
ones that interact a lot because I see them interacting. So
correct.
therefore I know they're buying a lot of product because I see their interactions. But there's a lot of secret Dunbarton customers that spend a lot of money that I don't have a clue who they are.
But
So
I've seen
it's not like
you.
I get reports from my
No, no, no. But
because
you're right. The loud
because
ones.
I don't have a look. I know who my big wholesale customers are. But my big consumer customers, the only way I know they're big consumer customers is because they post a lot of photos. They're involved in the Saka Squatch group. They comment a lot on my posts or wherever. So obviously, I realize that those guys are consuming a lot of our cigars. But look, not all of them are like big league buyers. because they can't afford to be a big league buyer,
Well,
but it doesn't make them buy into the brand any less.
no, but what I will say though is about what you just said about as long as people can afford. I have watched you go up to people that I'm not going to say any names because I'm not calling anybody out, but I have watched you go up to spouses and go, they're not spending too much, right? Because I always see their mail drops and it's thousands of dollars. Are they really? Are you guys good? Like you're able to do this, right? I just don't want you to hate me, but
Yeah,
like you care
because look,
to that.
what good is if you have a guy that he spends like $8,000 a year on your cigars to not buy any cigars for the next 4 years. You know what I mean? That's not like cigars are consumable. They're meant to be smoked. They're meant to be destroyed. They're meant to be repurchased. So uh, obviously, I don't want anyone to get themselves into debt as a result of chasing cigars because in the end, there's no magic cigar. There's no cigar that if you don't get to smoke it, your life is over. The whole FOMO thing. I mean, that is something that really not generated by me. It's generated more by the consumers and to a degree the retailers. I mean, look, do I talk about what I'm releasing? Of course I do. It's my job to talk about the products that I'm releasing. It's my job to make new cigars. It's my job to make interesting products for people to purchase. But how the consumer feels about that's entirely on that's on them. Because there's never been a time where I say, except recently with Year of the Duque, and it's really not that I've said it, but I had to say it that yeah, Year of the Duque it's a one-time drop. There's going to be a year of somebody or something or something else next year, right?
You're the
So
Kevin Shahan.
right. So Year of the Duque is what's out in the wild. It's what's out in the wild. Now maybe I'll make it again, but I won't make it again in the box it's currently in as a whole box. If anything, I maybe somewhere in the future, if I'm still making Europe's 10 years from now, maybe there'll be a
Sampler.
Europe sampler, right? I mean,
That's what I see.
where you reprise and you put like 2 Year of the Duques and two of the 26s and two of the 27s. That is something I could see, you know, doing. But I mean, everything else, I mean, there's nothing that we don't make more of. We make more unicorns. We make more Papa Saka. We make more Brulee Blue. We
Well, the
make
GFYs are done.
Yeah, the GFYs are done. Yeah, but that's just
But
such a
those are done because the market said that they're done. If they were bought and sold like crazy, they wouldn't be done, right? Like, let's be
no. Those would
honest.
be done. That's a pain in the ass project. It's
No, but
it's
you even put didn't you even pulled the now leave me the hell alone?
well, I pulled the not leaving that alone because look, retailers are only going to give you so much shelf space.
That's what I mean. But if it
So
was
if I keep,
selling,
so if I
you
keep,
would
yeah,
have
it was
kept it.
selling. It was selling. It was selling the same pace as Exclusivo. It was selling the same pace as Naka
Oh,
Tamale.
okay.
Yeah, the way all Moesters work, it's like so boring. Whatever's the newest sells the most. Whatever's the second to the newest sells about half as much as the newest. And whatever's the past ones, they all sell about a quarter as much, and they all have sold equally. Okay, so Nakatamale, Exclusivo, Now Leave Me the Hell Alone, and Unstolen Valor sales are pretty much equal. But which sells more? And then Krakatoa currently sells the most. And when I release
Really?
whatever the
Okay.
next Muestra is, then that Muestra will be the one that will sell the most, and Krakatoa will go down to the Bewitch level, and then Bewitch will get kicked into the same field as Exclusivo and all the others. So the problem you have though is as you add them, the retailer is only going to give you so much space in the store. I can't have 8, 9 Muestra de Sakas, right? They're never going to give you the space. And so therefore, having more than maybe 5 of them active at any one time is really even 5 active at any one time is probably one too many, to be honest with you. Um, but but yeah, so one had to be kicked, so I kicked the one I liked the least. Now leaving that alone. That's the one I kicked.
Well, you also have the FSG. That's limited to Corona.
Yeah, but Jeff, because he sees how popular it is, uh, we've already selected more tobacco. So basically, there'll be. So I made another batch of FSG Black Angus's that he will get the balance. I used all the leaf he sent me basically. So, and I don't even know exactly how many more boxes he's going to get because they haven't gone through final quality control, but there'll be about 900 roughly, give or take 30, 40 boxes either way. Um, and then that will be all there will be for a minimum of about 2.5 years because he literally the tobacco that I need, he just sent me. So I don't know whether those will last, but knowing Jeff, he'll take FSG and he'll make the Black Angus a $75 cigar and stretch it out for the 3 years. You know what I mean? I'd say I don't know what Jeff will do. Okay. But yeah, there'll be more FSG Black Anguses. Now, will they taste identically the same? Probably not, because it's not like a continual steady state production where you can constantly tweak it. I have this one ingredient that I'm basically kind of getting spot. I have this FSG Lajero. So we'll see how the next, and look, I don't know how it's going to turn out. Tobacco's in transit now. So have to get it in. We'll have to get it into the bulks. We'll have to ferment it out. We'll have to see what we have. We'll have to age it, and we'll go from there. Will it definitely be the FSG Black Angus? It will. Will it taste 100% exactly the same? Probably it won't. But at the same time, I think it'll taste similar enough that I don't think the consumer's going to be able to tell the difference because the other one that they smoked would have been 3 years earlier, and any of
Yeah.
their humidor are going to have 3 years of age on them,
Yeah.
right? So you can't take any cigar that has 3 years of age compared to one that's been just recently rolled. But so yeah, even a thing like Black Angus, if Jeff is willing to give me the tobacco and he's willing to buy the cigars, I'm willing to make it. I'm a whore. I mean, in the business to make and sell cigars. It's that is the job that I have. I'm not in the business to make limited editions. I'm not supreme.
What about the UB33? Is that going to be a one and done?
Maybe not. Again, it depends on the customer. Does the customer want more UB33s? The problem you have with a UB33 is it's a relatively small format cigar, and it doesn't cost much less to make a UB33 than it costs to make a full size U boat. But the customer smokes a UB33, he's smoking a kind of a slightly fat Corona Gorda versus getting to smoke a full size Churchill. Is he going to be willing to pay the price that it costs to have a UB33? I don't know whether they will or they won't. We'll see what happens.
It's trade off, right? Because if I'm looking for a 20 or 45-minute cigar, maybe I'm willing to spend a little bit more on that
The
because of the
UB33 won't be
convenience.
that. Like all my cigars burn on the slow side, so
Yeah,
it's still
that's
going to be
true.
an hour. It's going to be an hour plus cigar. Unless half wheel smokes, it'll be 42 hours and 16 minutes. I said, what a review did I recently see they posted? Was it Salida Red? I think it was Salida Red. And I looked at average smoking time of Salida Red was 2 hours and 7 minutes.
Wow,
How the
I have.
how the hell can you spend 2 hours and 7 minutes smoking a Salida Red? I mean, that's like I can't even wrap my brain around 2 hours and 7 minutes to smoke a Salida Red.
That's what I have not been able to get my arms around
Right.
yet. My hands on
You
that
said to
one.
me you took 2 hours to smoke a pot of Paro. This I get. Okay. This
Yeah.
damn cigar is 8.5 inches long. Okay. That I can, but man, 2+ hours to smoke a Solita Red. Me, I smoke a Solita Red. That's like 45 minutes, 50 minutes. Maybe if I nurse it along, maybe I'm an hour five, but 2 hours and 7 minutes. That is really smoking those cigars really super slow and cool. And I also think that and I think that that's one of the things I think consumers they read the reviews and they don't even think about that when they smoke cigars at that pace, how much different those cigars taste to them and how their opinions differ so much
Yeah, oh yeah.
when you're taking 2+ hours to smoke a cigar that the average consumer is going to probably smoke in about an hour five. You
Correct.
know what I mean? Because there's definitely a flavor difference in it, when you do that.
Now we have a question here from Tony. Tony, I think I can answer this. The answer is no, but it doesn't mean they won't be brought back. However, there's still some out there in the wild you can find, and there is one included inside the sampler pack that Steve's releasing this year as well.
Well, of course, too, we're actually doing an archive release of the double wide for. I think it's scheduled to sell in January of next year.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're making a small batch of Todos Las Dias double wides. So the problem with Todos Las Dias is it shares a common ingredient with Sobremesa, and there's not enough to make Sobremesa and Todos Las Dias simultaneously. So I had to pick one or the other, and look, Sobremesa just greatly outsells Todos
Yeah.
Las Dias. It always did, and
It's your
so
first cigar.
I chose Sobremesa, and but we did an archive release of the Thick Lonsdale like what 3 years ago, I think. 3 years ago, 2 years ago. I can't even keep it straight anymore. I think it was about 3 years ago. And we're going to do an archive release of the double wide and then the thick Lonsdale. Um, so we're making it's only in the deep cut sampler. So the deep cut sampler, I'm going to need about 5,500 cigars roughly. 4,900, 5,000. Again, it's going to come down to word of Saka. Word of Saka is going to determine,
Hmm.
at least not long term, but in the short term, how many deep cut samplers we can make. Because there's only so many materials ready to make word of Saka.
And that's the premier cigar in the release. That's the unreleased,
It's
finally
the unreleased one.
released.
Premiere, I don't know.
Well, I would say premier in the sense that people are going to be buying that sampler pack, even if they had every one of those other cigars in their humidor at home, because they want that word of Saka.
yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Pretty
that's the
fucking
premier cigar.
pretty fucking cruel, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's so I actually so I wanted I don't think that's cruel at all because you explained why you did that. And why you released it this year instead of holding it till next year. And it was because it was exactly where you wanted it to be. And
Yeah, because
next
it
year,
won't taste the
it's not
same
going to be
next
the
year.
same.
And when
So,
I make more word of Sakas, this batch of word of Sakas won't taste anything like that batch of word of Sakas. So if I don't release it within the window, I'm basically going to be wasting these tobaccos and or these cigars. So I'd rather make them.
but
Now
then
look,
you,
there's a downside to that though. If I did word of Saka as a whole box as a release, how many people would buy word of Sakas as a whole box? So by
I,
putting one cigar in the sampler, I'm giving a chance for consumers to smoke it. And if they don't like it, I kind of screwed myself. Right. Now, if they really like it, it's a win because then they're going to look forward to when we do the full box release of Word of Saka. But if it gets panned, then that's a cluster muck because I mean, there's a risk in letting someone taste one cigar. There really is.
yeah, that one cigar might not be perfect, might not burn right. You're
But
100%
they just
right.
don't like the taste of it. I mean, because
But
the word of Saka is kind of a heavier, rougher blend. They just may not like it.
well, so I wanted to kind of ask you because you bring up a great point. And kind of the underlying point is you're people are buying that cigar. People are buying the sampler box. One, it's a unique style sampler. It's a stuff you smoke all the time, which you
Yeah,
had
it's my
mentioned.
favorite.
You had mentioned that it's not really typical for a sampler to do that. Oftentimes, it's entry level stuff or stuff that doesn't sell often, or whatever. So you
Because
made
the reality is, when
a
consumers buy samplers, they're expecting a discount.
correct,
Sampler equals discount. Just
correct.
that's that clear and simple. But I would argue that Dunbarton customers, and they proved it with the GFY sampler, there was no discount on the GFY
Mm-mm.
sampler. Those
I
were
bought
all
two
full price.
boxes.
Those were just full price Lanceros. That was the cost it was to get on the ride. You want to get on the ride, or you don't want to get on the ride. So we have a different consumer that doesn't. But look, Dunbarton consumers are not the guys that are buying cigars off Cigar Bid, right? They're not the guys that, oh my god, I just got the 40% off special from my friends at XYZ, and it comes with a cutter, and it comes with free shipping, and it comes with double bonus points. Those aren't those aren't. I'm not saying those not that none of them are Dunbarton customers, but that's not our typical Dunbarton customer. The Dunbarton customer is they tend to be more experienced. They tend to kind of figure out what they like and what they don't like. they kind of they understand. They've smoked all that stuff. They've done it. They've been there. They've tried. They did their cigar bid experience. They did their discount experience. They've done their bundles. They've done this. They've done that, and they still might buy some of that. But at the same time, they also see value at the other end of the spectrum. And a lot of the guys that are at that end of the spectrum, they won't even touch any of that stuff at all. Like, it's so rare that I smoke a sub $10 cigar today where I'm actually like, I would want to smoke it again. There's just not a lot of them out there. Not that they're not good cigars. Not that, no, they're not. They're decent cigars. They're smoke up cigars. They're okay cigars. they're very they're very pedestrian. They're very basic bitch is what they are. Okay. And look, when you've only smoked a few thousand cigars, that's great. But when you're someone that smoked over 100,000 cigars, the basic bitch cigar just doesn't cut it for me anymore. I want something more. And I'm at a point in my life where I can afford it. So I'm willing to pay for it. At the same time, though, I'm not a label smoker either. Because like I run into these guys all the time. All those smokers, limited release Padron or limited release Opus X or limited this, limited that, right? If it doesn't have they're buying the label 1st.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. The label has value to me in the fact that it tells me the origin of the cigar. It tells me who made it. It tells me that I may or like for example, Atabey Byrons, right? They're beautifully, impeccably made cigars. Way too mild for me. Just they are. So for me, the whole is it worth $30? Is it worth $40? I can see there's a consumer that it is worth that, but for me, it just isn't. Okay, but there are some people that smoke Atabey and Byron just because it's a $40 cigar.
Correct.
The
Correct.
reason why they smoke it.
Correct.
Right? They want to show that off. But I guarantee you, there are Dunbarton consumers that they smoke Dunbarton because there's a certain cachet with smoking Dunbarton. Not necessarily because of how much you spend on the cigar, but because the amount of respect that the company has managed to garner over the last decade. That, you know, if you kind of smoke Dunbarton, you're kind of a in the know kind of consumer. Because the reality is, the average consumer still has no clue who we are. They don't know our brands. They don't follow it along.
That's just crazy for me to think, but I mean, I'm fully invested into this. So I want to ask you a question. I'm not sure you've ever been asked this before, but at what point in time when you started Dunbarton did you realize you had the trust of your consumers? Meaning, Sober Mesa was not a cheap cigar, classified as a cheap cigar when it came out on the market. It was over $10.
I would argue it was a disappointing cigar for some of my consumers.
Oh,
It was
and that's
too
fine, but
mild, too refined.
correct. But if that's just because we all expected you to come out with something more along the lines of Liga, and you've said that
Right.
several times, but we all went down that journey with you. How far into Dunbarton did you realize that you had that diehard consumership where they were
Mm,
willing to follow you down the road of your palate?
mm,
Because that's what you've done is you've guided us down your palate.
I think probably about 3 years ago. You know, when you're that, I'm going to just use the term boutique, small craft, whatever term you want to put to it. You get to a certain point where you kind of top out because there's always something else to chase from somebody else. You know what I mean? There's something that's newer and something that's sexier. And look, the media always hypes the newest, the latest, the greatest. This is going to be this. Is part of what the media does. And so the media tends to move those consumers on to whatever the next like nirvana thing is. And so you often, when you have those brands, whatever they might be, a Warped or a Roma or I don't think Romas should be in that category, but let's go Warped or Caldwell or Viaje. I mean, these are brands that, they had their like really spotlight moments, right? And then what ends up happening is they kind of fizzle and fade. You hit a certain point, and then it just kind of drops off, and it becomes really, really hard. And I think when you see the core lines continue to grow, and you see the hardcore Dunbarton customers not only smoking core, and they're interested in the next release in a way, because that's the other thing too. When you make so many releases, you often end up with some clunkers along the way, and eventually you have so many clunkers that you lose that consumer. And like, I'm gonna let the consumers pick some brands out, but I think all of us off the top of our head can pick probably 10 or 12 companies
Mhm.
that made a lot of really great limited editions to eventually make a lot of limited production things that were really very subpar, and
Yep.
they kind of lost you where you weren't willing to. Okay, I'm done. I'm not chasing whatever the next XYZ that guy is going to drop, because
Correct.
I've been doing it, and the last three or four have been pretty disappointing. And at this point, it just feels like just bad gambling. It's bad money on the table. Um, when I kind of see the fact that you're growing your core, which is really unusual as a small company to grow core, and then when I saw the fact that every time we would do something that's a unique blend, a unique liga, something that was relatively exclusive or limited, that it would continue to sell out. And it's been pretty much that way now for like the last 8 years. Not Yeah, about 8 years, 7 years. And that's an unbelievable run. And then the other thing that's really unusual is when you see those kind of limiteds end up having like long-term life, because that's really unusual for you to do a drop and then for it to like literally 3, 4, 5 years later still be something that you can make every year. And there's a growing consumer when you see stuff like Don Derma and Barbara Amaria and U-boat, for example, those kind of things. That's very not normal. That's not the normal pattern of the way these things work. It is more like the Supreme thing where, oh wow, we got the special Supreme hat. This is going to be the only hat that has this particular color. Boom, boom, boom. You're into Supreme. You got to get it now. You don't get it now, you're never going to get it again. So that's a really unusual thing. Now it becomes hard. I'm unwilling to put the energy into promoting those because I have new people that I have to promote.
Correct.
So like I've made it very clear to like Ronnie with Don Derma, small batch on Barbara Amaria, Fetto with the 100, famous with her 80th. I'm happy to make them, but I want them to be something that's just available all the time more than it being, hey, this is the only time you can buy this kind of thing, right? Because I can't have like, how do I have space for like this year? We have Con Alam is going to come out for Harrisburg Beer and Cigars. It's fucking fantastic. It's a great, great cigar. But if I gotta like push Don Derma 3 weeks before I drop Con Alam, and 3 weeks after Con Alam, I have to sing the praises of Barbara Maria, and then I got to sing the praises of yes, and
You're
this.
fatiguing.
It's just too overwhelming,
Correct.
right? So I pretty much had to have the conversation with all of these people that we make cigars for. That listen, I don't care about the dollar amount; it doesn't matter to me. But I want you to get out of this mentality that I'm going to make this batch and it's going to instantly sell out, because you can't have that. You can't have U-boat sell out 5 consecutive years every time you drop it, right? It's not possible. U-boats are fantastic. It's one of my favorite of the exclusives that I make. It's actually one of the cigars that I think ages out the best. Older U-boats are fantastic. They're one
Let,
of my favorites.
let me ask you this. Let me ask you this real quick. Have you ever considered putting out an exclusive sampler?
Well, this is where you get into problems with this. You put out an exclusive sampler. How is the retailer going to feel that was the original person that put the energy behind promoting it? It's taking money out of their pocket. And then how's the retailer who isn't that exclusive going to feel about selling a product that basically promotes a cigar that another store has? So if you start thinking about the business angle of it, it becomes very hard to do an exclusive sampler. Look, I have one major customer, really big name customer, and he will not sell red meat lovers, even though it's one of the hottest brands in the country right now. And why won't he sell it? Because it's an Abe Dababna brand. Well, no, red meat
It's
lovers.
not.
It's not, right? But that's where it was originally sold.
Conceptually, it is, but
It was original, but it's not. It's not an Abe Dababna brand. But he
no.
won't buy it for his shelf because it's an Abe Dababna brand.
See, that doesn't. If I can almost promise you that if you were to come out with an exclusive sampler, Abe would probably do it. Because Abe goes overseas to get your stuff from people.
Abe would do it.
Abe doesn't care. He just wants the sale.
Look, I love Abe as a customer, but in the end, Abe's not my business.
No, correct.
Right? I mean, look, he's one of my absolute best customers. I love doing projects with him. He's inventive. He's creative. He always
Summer of Saka starts in 2 weeks.
He always adds something extra. I mean, and look, Abe's investment in us has helped Dunbarton to grow. And look, because of what Abe does, gets other shops interested. Because you're always interested in, well, what are these shops doing? When you see shops that focus on Dunbarton, and you see that a lot of times they're some of the best shops in the country, then it makes you as a shop owner go, well, wait a minute, maybe I should kind of like pay attention to this too, right? So there's a huge value in that. But when you say Abe is the atypical retailer.
Yes, and that's what I mean.
Abe is not the example.
Yes.
Abe is, I mean, just like the thing that he did with overseas. I had nothing to do with that. Abe said to me, "Can I buy overseas from you?" I said, "No, you can't. We only sell it overseas." And he goes, "Well, can you put me in contact with the people overseas?" I said, "Well, listen, we tell everybody the same thing. Anything that's international orders, you contact Hoyt, Nicaragua, and you talk to them." That was the end of the conversation. He contacted them. He found out how he could buy overseas, and he bought overseas. That's what he did, and he brought it in and he spent his money on it. But literally, I know people think I'm joking around. I mean, I knew he was going to do it. He talked to me about doing it, but I found out like 2 hours the day before he dropped it. Oh yeah, I have the overseas. I'm going to launch it today. I had no clue that he was going to drop overseas. I had no idea that he actually had even bought it. I didn't even know how many boxes he bought. I knew nothing about it.
They sold out like that.
Yeah, they sold out like that. The thing that surprised me on that is I know that he sold it for less than what he normally would. He didn't make his normal margin on that because, look, I don't know exactly what he paid for it because I don't know what his duties coming back to the States were or what his shipping was. But I do know what the Jitco prices are because he bought them out of the bonded warehouse in Europe. So the Jitco price I know. So with the Jitco price, what did he sell for, like $200-300 a box or something?
It was $30 a stick, I think it was.
So that would be $300 a box.
Yeah.
He should have sold them for about probably like $380, $385.
But see, I think in his mind, he's like, all right, if I grab an overseas, what's the likelihood of somebody just buying just the overseas? I guarantee you a lot of people potentially bought other stuff on top of that.
Right. Or maybe it's the first time they ever made a purchase with Smoke In. Right. So maybe it adds a consumer to your database that you didn't have before.
Correct.
Right. So and look, for those guys, that's all the value.
Because there are Dunbarton
getting customers that have never bought from you has in some ways more value than customers that always buy from you. I mean, it's a question of customer acquisition and then customer retention, right? If you're a smart retailer, that's the way you think about everything. How do I acquire a customer? And then how do I retain the customer? And that's the formula that you have to solve. So when you do something crazy like that, okay, maybe I don't even know how many boxes. He didn't have a lot of boxes, but let's say he had 100 boxes. I don't even know what he had. Maybe 3 or 4 of those people were customers that had never purchased from him before, right? And he didn't make the normal profit, but he made some profit on it. So you acquired a customer that you actually made profit on, because where the other way it normally works is you have to pay money to acquire a customer. It's always, you always anyone that watches Shark Tank, is one of the basic questions is, what's your customer acquisition cost, right? What's your ROAS? These are the These are the questions that they always ask the entrepreneurs, right? Is what did it cost? And then what's the lifetime spend of that customer? What's the retention? How long, when you have a subscription service, how long do they stay on the subscription service? 3 months, 6 months, a year and a half? So customer acquisition is goal one, and then customer retention is goal number two as a retailer. Because in the end, so there used to be this like kind of myth that used to get propagated by the brick and mortar retailers that, well, when you bought a cigar online, it wasn't the same quality cigar as if you bought it in my store, right? They give them the lesser grade, even though it was the branded product. It's just bullshit. It's the same product. Okay. There is no like, we send lower quality cigars to Cigars International or
No,
to
that's stupid.
Cigar. It's like, come on. It's like, that doesn't even make any sense.
It doesn't make sense. That
The
would
product,
require
the
so
product
much
is
work.
branded and it's in a box is identical. Now,
Yeah.
maybe one guy does better job of taking care of the cigars. Maybe they have better humidity, environmental controls. You could argue that. Because I mean, some of the big box guys, they got parts in their warehouse that are really good. They got parts in their warehouse because it's so large that aren't quite as good. But the product is the same, right? So every retailer is essentially selling the exact same product. So the question is then, well, how are you going to compete to sell that product from you? And that is the issue. The issue is, how do I get a consumer to buy from me? Why do they buy from me? What am I giving them? For a long time, it was price. But when you have a brand like Dunbarton and the map is the map, I mean, yeah, you'll find here and there somebody that'll violate the map, but we normally, we slap their dicks around a bit and we get them in shape. Okay, so it's kind of like, a momentary thing. But for the most part, Dunbarton prices are pretty much the same wherever you buy them, short of a tax issue, right? But if you're buying online, the taxes don't typically affect you. So therefore, you shop where you shop because you feel as though that particular vendor is providing something additional. They're providing better customer service. They're providing a sense of community. They're providing, like, look, Abe is the king of this. He makes all sorts of custom swag items, right? That I don't look. This is an argument, not an argument. This is an issue I always get when they're like, "Man, you make all that stuff." Like, yeah, like the year the Duque coin that he made. I didn't pay for that. I had nothing to do with it. Now, he said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this, but if I do it, you have to guarantee me, you have to tell me exactly how many boxes I'm going to get because I'm going to end up spending $20." Those coins were really expensive. They're very small quantity. They're not even coins. They're like fucking dinner plates, for God's sake.
Oh yeah, and I know who makes them. So yeah,
right.
I know
So
about
they're like
what
really
they would be.
expensive. Look, if I do this, you have to promise me that how many boxes can you guarantee that I'll get? Okay, so I had a number with him, and it was a reasonable number, but it wasn't like Abe cornered the market. He didn't get like, he didn't get 30% of all the year of the Duques or anything.
No.
But
that coin maybe made somebody buy from him over
right,
somebody else.
maybe they bought it from him.
Yeah.
And then that's an extra level of service, an extra perk that he's providing, and maybe to attract a customer who hadn't previously bought from him, or maybe it's something he looks at it as an added benefit to his really loyal customers, and that's something that he does.
I mean, he does it for the Soccer Squatch group. If you spend X amount, you get a Soccer Squatch coin. I mean, I it's over there on my picture thing, but if you spend so much, you get a Soccer. So at what point in time?
But that's him being proactive. That isn't me and him sitting down and saying, "Hey,
maybe
what can we do together?" Right? Hey, because look, the retailers expect me to pay for it. Right? That's what they expect, because it's like promoting my brand. They expect me to pay for it. But here's my thing that I say is, I'm going to sell all the year of the Duques anyway.
Yeah, I don't need the coin.
Why am I going to spend $20 to make some frisbee of a coin? I love you, Chris. You're great. I'm glad he memorialized you in a coin, but you know what I mean? And the other thing too, you also have to understand that on the manufacturer end, I don't make the money that the retailer makes. So I don't even have the margin. The retailer has more margin to actually make the cool stuff, right? Whereas the manufacturer is on the next is on the we get less on our plate than the retailer gets on their plate. So, but that's Abe being creative and being unique and being different. And it's a way that he separates himself from his other competitors because he knows that he's selling brown and round, which is the same thing that everybody is selling. You
I
know,
will say though, this is one of the nicest boxes out there on the market.
I don't know if it's one of the nicest, but I think
I
it.
love that red piano finish. I mean,
I think
it's
let me see what I think
gorgeous.
that box is. I think it fits the. I think it fits the caliber of boxes that you would expect on these year of lunar calendar releases, right? So I mean, because Davidoff sets the standard, right? I can't afford to do a Davidoff box because if I did a Davidoff box, the cigar would have to be $45.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's in keeping with the other year of releases that the 42 other million companies do release, and that was the goal. I wanted to. The year of is kind of a double dipper. The year is obviously honoring my friend Chris, but it's also a little bit of a troll. So
Yeah, it is. Because it's
it's like,
your own year of.
yeah, it's like you know what? It's a little bit of a troll. It really is. If you start to really think about it, it's
Well, so I've been wondering at one of the reasons why I think Abe does what he does with you in the sense of getting the overseas and doing this summer of Saka
but,
is
but I
at
always say
some
this,
point
I
at,
always say this out loud. He's only going to do it as long as it works.
but that's what I mean is he's
When it stops working, he will stop doing it, and it will become the year of whatever. It'll become the summer. I should say the summer of whatever, right? And in fact, last year wasn't supposed to be the Christmas of Saka Plaza. It was supposed to be the Christmas of another brand, and the other brand just didn't deliver. They didn't come through in time, and couldn't get them to agree on anything. And I got to tell you, A makes it easy to agree because he does all the graphics. He sends you the graphics. You say, I like it. You say, I don't like it. No, this is bad. This is good. Look, we got something coming up. I think it's next week. He made these like terrible Saka plushies. He made a Saka doll that is absolutely hideous.
so guys, this might be I haven't seen the Sakadala yet. Oh,
It-
oh
it's
yes,
so
yes, yes, we have.
they
Yes.
are so horrifically bad.
But we
Uh,
want them. We
right.
want them.
They're beyond bad.
We need a
And
stretch
and and,
Saka.
look, and I approve the artwork. And then when they landed, he sent me a video, and I was like, dude, you cannot give those away. You can't. Like, you just can't. Right. And Abe ate the cost on them. And I made him ship them all to me. He has one in his office. I kept one. And next week, I think we're going to burn them all. We're going to burn them all alive. We're going to do a live video to celebrate the incoming of the summer of Saka by burning an effigy of all these really ugly, ugly plushies. And they are hideous. I mean, they are so bad. In fact, the one in my office is so bad, I have it turned around. Right? So I'm looking at the back of it because it's
Well,
so.
well, I think one of the reasons
But
why
let me
he
say this: what retailer would be willing to do that? He spent the money out of pocket. I approved the artwork, and then as soon as I saw, it, like, dude, that you no, you know what I mean? And look, and it's that hideous. And he's like, yeah, I gotta eat the L on this one, right? But that's a very good working relationship,
but I
right?
think the reason why he does that is because you have a strange following of people that seek your stuff out. And so, like, for him to bring in something like the overseas, knowing that the American market wants it, he's the only one that can get it. He wouldn't have done that with somebody else that didn't
Here's the
have
funny
that
thing too
pull.
about the overseas. The overseas was blended more for that European palate. So honestly, I don't know that like I would not release the overseas blend in the United States.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at though is at what point in time in Dunbarton's career did you realize you had farming fans that seeked out what you did, fans that literally seeked out shop
Well, I
exclusives.
mean, I answered that question as being like 3 years earlier.
Oh, okay,
But
okay,
but
okay,
but
sorry.
but 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 the reality is I've had it from the beginning. It was just much less of them.
But
There's just
when was
more
your
of
first
them.
shop exclusive as Dunbarton?
What was the first shop exclusive?
How far into Dunbarton's life?
Was it Firecracker for Two Guys? Was it one of their Firecracker releases? I don't know. Was it Firecracker? Was it Don Dharma? Firecracker, potentially. Don
Could have
Durham.
been Dunderma.
Yeah,
That's a
I mean,
great
Red
cigar.
Meat Lovers was pretty early on. So Red Meat Lovers was pretty much at the front end. Was one of the early ones. Um,
Jason says frog juice or owl.
no, definitely not Owl. And Frog Juice was definitely not it. Frog Juice was down. I mean, Frog Juice has been around a while, but I think Frog Juice came after U Boat. I think Frog Juice came after Don Derma. I think Frog Juice came after Barbara Amaria. I
So
think.
you
I can't even keep it
you
straight.
you caused a question from Colin here, and he asks you, "What's the European
All right,
palate in
so let
comparison?"
me let me explain. So, not that there's a different European palette, but my products that are released, the distribution portfolio that goes into the international market is very small because you have a lot of rules and regulations, in a lot of cases, fees that you have to pay to be able to legally import certain SKUs into these various countries. So the international customers do not have they don't have the wealth of Dunbarton to choose from. Okay. And so they get a lot of Sober Mesa, they get a lot of Sober Mesa Brulee, but in both of those, only like 3 or 4 SKUs in each of those. Okay. They didn't get blue until just last year. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Uh, you know, and Mi Querida, they just started getting Mi Querida like 2 years ago, right? So most of the international Dunbarton customers, they're used to Sober Mesa Brulee, Muestra de Saka Exclusivo, some of the stuff that's more on the milder end of my spectrum, right? So therefore, when I made overseas kind of to be a step up, but not a here's a tricky Traka, here's a Papa Saka,
Yeah.
here's a Don Derma Golden Child. You know what I mean? Here's a Kana Lam.
Now,
I
is that
think
a lot to do with the fact that there are heavy Cuban countries in Europe, and those are
no, it
typically
just
more
has to do
mild?
with these people are well, no, it has to do with just the rules. But yes, I think initially, I think for a lot of overseas retailers, that their customers are primarily mild cigar smokers. So they tend to focus more on the milder blends. So therefore, overseas is a very medium bodied, balanced, kind of nuanced style cigar. Right? It's very Sobra Mesa like,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. So I mean, I would not release overseas because overseas in the United States wouldn't seem distinctly different enough, I think, from some of the other things. Because as you do these exclusives, you need the delta to be great enough that the consumer can go, oh yeah, I can really tell the difference between a frog juice. I can really tell the difference between a Federal 100. I can really tell the difference between a Don Derma Golden Child. You know what I mean? Where where overseas, but they've never had any of those cigars because those cigars are impossible to export. Just you could never afford to do the registrations and the paperwork. Look, like a country like France, you have to apply to be able to import a cigar into France. And it's a 1 year approval process, and you have to pay $1,000
Per SKU, you have to
per
apply, or
SKU,
just as a
per
company?
SKU, per SKU, right?
Wow.
So you're at $1,000 to apply, and then you have to wait a year for them to approve it, and it's so hard. And then you got this rule in France, you got this rule in Italy, and you got this rule in the Netherlands. You got all these different rules. So the international portfolios are much, much, much smaller. You'll sometimes see on Facebook, I'll post a picture of that guy in Japan. He's one of our good customers. And when he buys, you'll notice he buys like a boatload of Sober Mesa. It's like crazy how many boxes of Sober Mesa the guy has, you know. And that's also the way they think too. Because you got to remember, these international retailers have been Habanos retailers. Well, Habanos doesn't have new brands. Last new brand from Habanos was 1998 with Vegas Robana and San Cristobal. You had the Behiki edition in 2010. Other than the regional releases, Habanos has not had a new brand, literally a real new brand in almost 3 decades now. Okay, a truly new brand. It's been almost 3 decades. So they think much, much differently in the way that they retail cigars. Okay, now it's changing because now you have their consumers active on social media. Their consumers are much more connected. Their consumers are very interested in what they're seeing in the United States. And that's what a product like Overseas is supposed to do, is it gives them something that's unique and different that isn't part of the portfolio. It gives them something that's worthy of going out of their way to try. But even with Overseas, it's called Overseas number one, so I can have an Overseas number two, so I can have Overseas number three.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's much easier from an application approval registration
Sure.
fee point of view to keep it all into this one
Same
Overseas
SKU.
where the band is going to look identical. The only difference is on the back of the band, it's going to have a one or it's going to have a two. The color stays the same. Because if you took the approach that, oh, I'm going to make a limited exclusive for the international market every year, and I'm going to do the Kanalam, Leche Burra, Kill Dalton route, it's a disaster. You literally cannot do it.
Correct.
There's no fiscal probable way for it to be commercially. It's just not feasible. So even Overseas was built in a way to try to look at, okay, how can we make something limited? And here's another perfect example. I assumed I would be doing a new Overseas every year, but the international market is so fucking slow. They're now just getting their first Overseas. We introduced it in September, and there's still international retailers that, oh yeah, we're going to bring it in this September, a whole year later, even though it's been available. They just move at such a snail's pace that there's not going to be an Overseas number two this year. I'm already done with Overseas number two. I thought I was going to be, but no, they haven't. More than half of our international accounts haven't even gotten their first shipment of Overseas because
Well,
they don't. They're everything international is slow as molasses. It just is.
well, it seems like that. That's why so many people work with just straight distributors, and it seems to be an easier
Well, first off,
route for a
you
lot of
only
people.
work with distributors. You don't even have a choice.
Yeah, that's true. That's
It's
true. And you only
legally
have a couple you could work with.
right. In some countries, you only have one.
Yeah, which seems a little pay to play type
It's
deal for me,
very
but
un-American, and that's
yeah, yeah.
also one of the reasons why the prices are so stupid.
So one of the things I wanted to showcase tonight, and a lot of people saw it that follow you on Dunbarton's Facebook page, company page, but I wanted to pay props to this, right? Because many states are really actively going against tobacco, and actively with laws, guidelines, regulations, taxes. But it seems like your state honored you. And I would
Yeah.
like for you to kind of tell everybody what this means, what this was, and what this means to Dunbarton in New Hampshire as a company.
Look, one of the things that people in New Hampshire, regardless of whether they're Democrat or Republican, we've always had this motto of common sense for all, right? And New Hampshire is one of those states that understands that successful business that operates well is to the benefit of the state, it's to the benefit of its residents. So New Hampshire has always been very pragmatic state. It's been very pragmatic when it comes to regulation. It's a very pragmatic state when it comes to taxes. It's a very pragmatic state and when it comes to how it executes everything. And that's regardless so far whether we have a Democrat governor or we have a Republican governor. And look, we have in the state, we have a group, Cigar Association in New Hampshire, that has been active now for, well, gosh, I don't even know how many years now. It's been a long time that we proactively engage with our local government in the state on both sides of the aisle, because ultimately, who's the winner at any given election cycle is whatever it is.
Hmm.
So you have to engage with both sides of the aisle, and we just we just actively explain to them why handmade cigars are good for the state, why keeping the taxes where they're at is good for the state, and how it actually brings revenue into the state and it benefits the state. And as a result, we look, we have we're like every place else. Are there some anti-tobacco people? Yes. Are there some tax zealots that just want to tax the living daylights out of you? Yes. But luckily, in the state of New Hampshire, they're in a very small minority.
Yeah.
And look, in the state of New Hampshire, Old Man the Mountain is a very historic, relevant symbol. It's something that younger New Hampshireites don't know about it because sadly it collapsed. But it was a rock formation that sat on the side of a mountain that looked like the profile of an old man. It was a very important. I don't know what the right term is, but it had
Structure.
religious importance to the original Indians that occupied. It's something of cultural significance, and look, I think that the state, anything that promotes New Hampshire, promotes good business, promotes common sense, promotes good stewardship. That's something that our state is willing to celebrate and engage and discuss, which is really unusual because honestly, think about it. How many governors would be willing to take a photo with a box of cigars?
That's what I
Even,
mean.
even, even the most hardcore of Republican governors are like, well, I'm going to irritate this person. I'm going to irritate that person. I'm going to do this,
Correct.
do that. I mean, but that's not the way. It's not the way New Hampshire works. New Hampshire has a much more pragmatic approach to it, and it was look, and when you get the phone call and the governor's office says, "Hey, we'd like you to cook," because we didn't solicit the meeting. They actually asked us, like, "Hey, would you like to come in and talk to us about this project? What you're doing? What is it for? What is it? Boom, boom, boom." I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to come in and talk to you. Thank you for the invitation." And so yeah, no, I think
It's a huge honor.
yeah, it is, but it's very New Hampshire. It doesn't surprise me, you know.
Surprised
Um,
the shit out of me in my state of Colorado. It's looking at a 63% sales tax on cigars. I think in the next 2 years, it's supposed to get up to 63%.
but see, New Hampshire benefits off the stupidity that surrounds us. We have Massachusetts to our south, we have Vermont to our west, we have Maine, which is the most reasonable, to our east, and then we have Canada to the north. So, I mean, New Hampshire is the shopping capital of New England. It is the liquor capital of New England. It is the tobacco capital of New England. And as a result, guess what? We have no sales tax. We have no state income tax. Okay, we don't have those things, because we have a very small business profit tax. Okay, and because it's a state that encourages businesses to grow and thrive, that the business profit tax, which is it's 3.5%. Okay, it's very, very reasonable,
It is.
and so they don't need to have all the other stuff. So it's something that our government recognizes. And yeah, no, but I agree. It's an honor that the governor would invite us in, and not only like when we got the invitation, it was kind of like I understood that it was going to be a photo op, but I didn't realize she was going to be willing to take a picture with a box of cigars
And her holding him.
and her holding it. I mean, that was something that she entirely did. And then I didn't realize that she was going to spend an hour with us talking about, well, what affects your business, me as a manufacturer in the state, and then the retailers that are in the state. And we actually had real conversations about that. And then even when we were taking the photo, I took a couple of photos. I said, "Would you mind if I put a cigar in my mouth? Because I just can't smile without a cigar in my mouth. I look like a moron." She's like, "No, go ahead, put a cigar in your mouth. I don't care." Yeah, yeah. You know, so and look, you're right. If Gavin Newsom took a photo like that, it would be hell to pay for taking a photo like that.
Yeah, that's very true. So I want to I want to move on right to the big thing here. I think Abe's still watching the Summer of Saka event that's coming up in a couple of weeks. It kicks off here. This
Yeah.
is the third year of Summer of Saka, right?
Yeah, I think it's the third year. He'll know better than me. They all blur together
Abe,
now.
correct me if I'm wrong on that, or somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the third year. So
Maybe it may be the fourth, actually.
when somebody like Abe comes up to you with this vision and this plan, obviously I don't know how early does an Abe come up to you and mention, is this a year in advance? Is
Well, let me say
because you
this.
have to get used, you have to get ready
Yeah.
for it.
So, I mean, I think the first time there was a Summer of Soccer, it was like an idea that was like 4 weeks before Summer of Soccer began, right? And then, because you don't know what the response is going to be to it. Um, and then it got to the point where I don't know what his customer flow through is going to be. So ultimately, with him now making all that, because look, originally he wasn't making custom
Yeah, so
stuff,
this is the fourth officially.
right? So now Summer Osaka is something that he really kind of, it's gotten to be so large that he ends up he can say better than I would, but I can't imagine how he's not already thinking about the next Summer of Saka. Right. By the time this one ends, it will be time to start thinking about the next Summer of Saka.
Oh yeah, knowing Abe, he's already thinking about
Well, I can already tell you, I think we just said the other day that I mean, we typically talk like in September, October for the next Summer of Saka.
wow.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example.
So
So, like for this Summer of Saka, we have a new event cigar that we're going to be releasing, right? It's going to go to everybody, but we were planning on, hey, Summer Saka, because look, he's gone through so many Pataperos the last 2 years that a lot of his Pataperos cigar. How many people really smoke a lot of Pataperos? It's a big, big cigar. So it's coordinating that. Like, okay, you're going to do a new event cigar. Is there any way we can have it in time so that we can use the new event cigar, the promo cigar with Summer Saka? So so there's coordination that has. I can't speak on his making his custom mugs and his coins and all the other stuff, but even the little part that I contribute to it, yeah, we have to discuss it in advance. There's there's no time to, because anything I do takes 6 to 7 months minimum. Like that's like my short fuse.
so
Uh,
when it the first year happened, were you surprised remotely at the success of it? And then each year it seems to kind of be getting
I don't want
more
to
and
speak for
more.
Abe, but I'm genuinely surprised by the amount of business that it generates.
So, do you have like kind of a rough, all right, kind of bake in over the last, looking at numbers, 20% more for next year, 15% more? Is it kind of on that level of simplicity or?
I think it's much larger than that.
Well, yeah, I'm just throwing numbers out.
This is a question you need to ask Abe, because I feel really awkward because I don't know what he wants me to say about what he
Oh no,
shares
no, I'm just
he shares
asking
his
how you
private
plan
numbers
for it.
with me,
I'm just
right?
asking
But I don't know that he
how
wants me to
you.
say. But
No, I'm just, yeah, how you plan
Summer
for that.
Saka, I think, has outpaced what either he or I expected, and it's gotten to be quite significant. Where Summer of Saka has become important.
Yeah, it's become a staple for Abe at this point. Like I don't know that he could not do it. I mean, by gosh, the last couple of years he's given away the two Soccer squad statues. I know you bought one of them back one
I bought
year.
both of them.
You bought both of them back. Okay.
Yeah, I bought.
So do you like, I gotta ask, so are these like your entryways into your office?
No,
Like,
I have a place to put them. Our office is very. We're about as ghetto goes when it comes to office facilities. So I don't have a good place for the statues. But
I
eventually someday I will.
columns for your
So
front door.
you know you know. But so you know. But yeah, I mean, yeah. But again, it's crazy. It's a crazy idea. It's a concept that and it's a huge risk. It's a huge risk for someone to make that kind of investment in the brand. But it always goes back to the same thing I always say: Summer of Saka will exist at Smoke Inn as long as Summer of Saka works. When it doesn't work, it'll be Summer of something else eventually. Now, I hope that eventually never comes, right? Because that's good for me, right? So it's only going to work as long as it works.
Now, I've always wondered this. When did your relationship with Abe start?
Well, I don't think we had a relationship, but I actually was a consumer for him in his Tequesta store.
Okay, long
So
time
his
ago.
very first time, yeah. So I actually was a buyer, and then probably the first time that Abe and I really started to interact, where we were both cognizant of what, because look, I didn't know who Abe was when I was a customer of his back in the Tequesta
Sure.
store. Um, I think the first time would have been probably somewhere around 2000 and well, wait, no, is that 2005? Yeah, 2005ish when I got to Drew Estate, because Drew Estate had already done the Ming project with Abe. They had an acid cigar called Ming,
Yep.
and and Abe had a very good relationship with with John and Marvin, and they were doing quite a few projects together. So, I mean, that was like the first time we ever engaged, I think, in any like business oriented conversations. Would have been about 20 years ago. But we knew each other about probably a good 8, 9, maybe even 10 years earlier. We were kind of aware of
So,
one another.
did you guys really start to become better business partners under Drew Estate or under Dunbarton?
Um, Whew. I did some stupid shit with Abe when I was at Drew Estate that I didn't want to do. So I was more the executor, facilitator of ideas that came out of John's head than myself. I mean, the business between Abe and I really. So we started Dunbarton in 2015. I would say in 2017, I was friends with Abe. We became friends, like real friends when I was at Drew. I became friends, more closer friends with Abe, not just acquaintances, but friends. And then Cindy's friends with his wife Brandy, and Cindy's much more closely in tune with the kids than I am. But So we actually had a genuine friendship that came out of that was separate of business. So I remember in 2017, company wasn't doing really well that year. I remember like 2016, we did like 1.5 million in sales, I think. In 2017, I think we did 1.7. 2017 was a really brutal year. It was tough, and I remember Abe even did a bone for me. He like gave me a free ad on KMA, and he gave me he ran a spiff in his store on my product. And this, I don't know, for consumers, I don't know what a spiff is. Spiff is where a manufacturer will basically give every clerk that sells a cigar 50 cents or $1, right?
Slight commission.
It's like an extra bonus commission. And Abe was like willing to like co-op a spiff with me where he would eat half of the spiff and I would eat half of the spiff, right? Which not normal. Normally the spiff is paid fully by the manufacturer. Is typically the way it works. And Abe ran a spiff, and I remember at the end of the 30 days, the numbers were so bad that he wouldn't even tell me how few cigars they sold because it was like some absurd number. They sold like 80 Dunbarton Tobacco Trust cigars, even though the guys were getting $1 extra for everyone they sold. They still couldn't sell it. It was crazy. And and Abe was just kind of like, just stick it out. You're doing the right thing. You're making really good products. It's going to take time. Going to hang in there. It was probably like 2 years, 3 years after that, probably right around 2020 or so. and he can correct me if I'm wrong, where the brand started to finally get a little bit of traction in his shop, you know, and then so Abe's success with our brand has grown with us success with our brand. It's been simultaneous. And the other thing that I had a conversation with Abe with about was when you look at like most of these retailers that ultimately end up like really super successful, they do end up eventually having to identify like one brand that they're going to have a relationship with that's a little closer. At JR Cigar, it used to be Villazon, the makers of Hoyt, Monterey, and Punch with Frankie Nasa and Estela Padron. At Cigars International, it was AJ Fernandez, right? Abdel, and all of his products. I mean, that was also kind of kicking around. Not that like we said, "Oh, I'm going to be the special relationship," but it was something that was kind of kicking around. And look, we had Red Meat Lovers, which was exponentially doing better year after year. But look, I can't reach as many people as a good retailer can reach. A good retailer has a much larger reach than any manufacturer until you get to the point that you're a Padron or you're a Fuente, right? But if you're not into that stratospheric level, retailers have way more interaction with the people that actually buy your product than the manufacturer ever does. I mean, I maybe have a little bit abnormal relationship, but still, it's not the same as what a retailer can do. A retailer has a much more direct to consumer kind of thing, and just
How
you know,
much how much in your opinion does a retailer have in the success of a brand? Not in their own store. I mean the success of a brand in general. Cuz there's a lot of brands and a lot of stores that don't get the love.
if you asked me 30 years ago, I would say very much so. I would say today less so.
Okay.
The world is much flatter. Social media has made it possible for you to reach out in a way that you couldn't reach out before. When you were limited, look, when you had Cigar Aficionado being the sole and single media source, they were essentially the gatekeeper to the consumer. If you did not, you know, if you did not align with them, there was really no way to reach those people in any way whatsoever. The problem that you have, though, is even though social media makes the world much flatter and attainable, it's also occupied by everybody, right? So every little podunky company has all the same access, all the same tools. I mean, it's really more of it's a hustle thing. Okay. You can't market your way to success. Ultimately, the product has to be satisfying. You know
Correct.
what I mean? You can market your way into getting someone to acknowledge that you exist. You can market your way into getting someone to try something, but you can't market your way into getting them to adopt it. In the end, the only one that's going to adopt it's the same thing with a retailer. A retailer can beat the drum on something that he thinks deserves attention, but if his customers don't feel that way, they're just not going to buy it, right?
That's
They'll,
very
they'll buy
true.
it once, they'll buy it twice,
Yep.
but it's not going to turn, right? So it's kind of like you got to do all this stuff, but in the end, it all does ultimately come back down to the product. The product has to be worthy in order for it to ultimately be successful.
Yes.
Because unworthy product won't look. And when I say unworthy product, sometimes worthy product doesn't mean really good cigars. Sometimes worthy product means just really well branded cigars,
Mhm.
cigars that make a consumer feel a certain way when they purchase those cigars, right? There's a certain lifestyle aspect to them. So me saying that, product being good is not always meaning the cigar is good. There's plenty of really great brands in the marketplace that sell really well. They're really pretty mediocre marginal cigars, right? They're not awful, they're not dreadful, they're smokable, they're fine, but they're not really particularly anything special, right? But that's even a bigger marketing lift to keep those things going and thriving and expanding. And look, a lot of it comes down to doors. I mean, I think that's one of the things that makes us really unique is we're just not that many retailers. I think people don't realize how small a customer base we really serve. We literally only have we have like right around 500 accounts. That's a very, very small
Yeah,
number.
what is it, like 2,600
There's,
shops
there's
total?
well over there's well over 5,500 doors
Oh,
that sell handmade cigars in the United
oh,
States.
55. Okay, okay. I had heard somebody say there's
And
about
then and then and
26
then
or
and
so
then
hundred.
direct buyers, there's approximately 1,500 that buy direct some of their product from manufacturers. So of the 5,500, you're looking at roughly almost 4,000 of those only buy through distributors, right? So look, being in the distribution chain is really, really, really important. I mean, it can take a brand like there are a lot of brands that are far less quality than our brand that sell way, way more because they're in the right distribution channels. Now, the thing with the distribution is that's a different game. That's a numbers game. That's a volume game. That's a discount game. Those are things that don't work with my philosophy for the product that I want to make. I can't make $19 Saka cons and make that work in a distributor game. It doesn't.
Mm-mm,
It's just not there.
mm-mm.
So if I want to make this type of product, it limits me to where I can go. In the same way as it also limits me even in the brick and mortar shops that do direct. We it's one of the reasons why we have such a small retailer count. And but for me, I don't actually care as long as the retailers we have continue to grow with us and they continue to do better. If they continue to grow and they continue to do better, and I can only make so many cigars a year and I can only scale so large, why do I need 900 accounts? Why do I need 1,200 accounts? Because I'm going to tell you right now, I mean, brands like Kristoff, brands like Southern Draw, those type of brands, they were in way more accounts than Dunbarton has ever been. Way, 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 way bigger numbers. La Polina, way bigger numbers than we've ever been in. So in reality, we actually have a lot of untapped future ahead of us. I mean, we have a lot. The funny part is I'm going to hit that magic number where I'm going to bump into the hey, this is as many as I can make, and then you're just going to kind of like okay, can't make anymore. And
As one leaves, you'll take on a new
I'm not
one.
even going to be able to grow into those accounts. And I think it's one of the things that like some retailers find really frustrating with us is like we had one of our top 10 customers today run a discount special. And we just told them, hey, we're not shipping you any more product. And they're like, well, wait a minute. Why are these the rules? Where is this in writing? I'm like, we've never put it in writing. This is our map. This is what it always is. This is the policy. It's like, what's the point of even having a contract brand? It doesn't even make sense to me. Who's going to sue who over what? It's ridiculous. It's nonsense. It's simple. You either do what we want. You. This is the way we do business. This is the way you do business. When those two businesses make sense together, we do business together. When they don't make sense together, no farm, no howl, no problem, no foul, no harm. We just don't do business together anymore. And so, like literally today, we scuttled one of our top 10 accounts. Now, here's what I know: we didn't do it in a rude way. We don't do it in an offensive way. But I guarantee you, 3 days from now, 4 days from now, it's going to get sorted out because they sell an awful lot of our product. It's really good business for them. It turns and they make good profit on it. But if you let them not do it, if you let them do what they want to do, they'll just drag your brand through the mud, which will then make it not profitable for everybody else. And when it's
Correct.
not profitable, you can't have things like Summer of Saka, where you have a retailer that's making an investment and spending extra money to promote and grow the brand and build community, right? So there has to be meat on the bones in order for those things to happen. There also has to be meat on the bones for us to have the warranty policy that we have. But we warranty every cigar. You get bad cigars from us, you send us an email. You go to our info page and somebody's actually going to actually answer. When you go to our contact us page, you're actually going to get a fucking reply. You know how unreal, unusual that is, that you will actually get a reply. And we try to make all the customers whole whenever we can. Eventually, you'll get some guys that are going to milk you, that are going to take advantage of your very generous policy. But look, we keep track, and after like 3 times in a year, like, okay, Bob, we're going to send you this, but don't ever fucking buy our cigars ever again, because they obviously suck. Okay, and you shouldn't be spending your good money on them, right? So you'll sometimes kick a consumer to the curb, but that's so rare that you end up having to do that. So I think we're a very transparent company. We're transparent with how we price. We're transparent about what we do. We're very, very.
I would agree. You don't hold back punches.
Just ridiculously transparent, right? And but I believe there are enough consumers and retailers that appreciate that and respect it, and there's enough for us to be a successful small company. Now, are there enough for Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust? We couldn't operate the way we operate if we were an $80 million company. We couldn't. It's not even remotely possible. Okay, but I'm 60 years old. What's the average age? 76 now before you kick it? Yeah, 16 years, man. That's all I got. What's the point? So I mean, it's one of those things where so it's kind of a question of just kind of deciding what do you want to make? How do you want to do business? Boom, boom, boom. And just being very sincere and honest and forthright about it. And yeah, look, sometimes I win and sometimes I lose. Luckily, we tend to be winning more than we're losing. So
Colin asks a question here. What's the importance of sticking to MAP pricing for a shop? We'll end the show with this question.
Yeah. So look, legally, when somebody buys something from anyone, us, they can sell it for whatever they want. They own it, right? So, and in a perfect world, this is the idea of the big companies. When you see these deep discounts, they love it because those discounts are mostly coming out of the retailer's end. So if all my retailers bought all of my cigars and charged a penny more a box for them, you know how many cigars I would sell? I'd be swimming in cash, right? But the problem is, then there's no money for the type of shops that you want to be in to make profit to support the brand. It ends up becoming a discount bin kind of product. And then what ends up happening is they want the product even cheaper, which then means you have to make the product a lower quality. So by leaving enough margin on it, and we have a very reasonable MAP policy. Our MAP is 15%, right? Because I understand that if you're a big box retailer, you have to show a reasonable discount to your consumers. Your consumers don't want to hear 5 points. They don't want to hear 7 points. They don't even want to hear 10 points. 15 is a very fair number. Okay. So it leaves a reasonable amount of margin for the retailer to make. Okay. And it allows you to be competitive because you want to try to make the playing field level. Because look, the way I look at it is I have to compete with all of my competitors in a humidor environment. They're all within 10 feet of me, right? So I want to make sure that my retailers have a level playing field too. So those retailers that decide to invest and promote our brand, that I'm not going to pull the legs out from under them and basically allow party A to do this and have rules for party B, because there's nothing more offensive in the world than, oh, so-and-so gets this, but I get that, right? Why does that person get special treatment? So by having MAP, it makes the playing field very level for the retailers. And honestly, it still isn't level. It still isn't level because in the end, you have all these individual states and their individual taxes, right? But I can't do anything about state taxes. That's just beyond my capacity to have any sort of effect on that at all. And you will get those retailers that live in high tax states like California. They actually say, you should sell me the product cheaper because I have to pay so much in taxes. It's not my fucking fault you live in California. It's not my fault you people keep voting these people in. You know what I mean? So my attitude is, I don't care if I have any accounts in California. As far as I'm concerned, Californians can order from somebody online. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't, to me, I'm not going to subsidize California's stupidity. They want to have crazy taxes, they have crazy taxes. And so what the map does is it's kind of a promise to the retailer that you're not going to cut the legs out from under them while they're trying to help. They say to their clerks, they say, listen, this guy's product's really, really good. I want you to recommend it. Boom, boom, boom. Well, you got your customers saying, hey, you really like Liga Privada. Have you ever tried a Mi Querida before? Boom, boom, boom. You do that for 2-3 years. You build up a Mi Querida customer. And then I go ahead and I say, oh, well, guess what? Abe DeBabna, because he's one of my absolute best customers and I love him. He does all this stuff for me. He can now sell up with 30% off.
That hurts everybody else.
It hurts. And it doesn't help the brand long term. And look,
it also keeps new shop owners from wanting to bring in your brand because of preferential treatment.
Well, also that, but
because maybe they'll never get that.
But here's the other thing too. It also makes other shop owners go, huh, here's this product. And look, we sell it, JR. We sell it, Cigars International. We sell it, Famous. We're at Neptune. We're at all these places that are historically deep discounters in a lot of ways, but yet our product is priced where it's supposed to be. And that's also a good signal for that brick and mortar retailer that he knows that, okay, because look, if you're a brick and mortar shop and you have a loyal consumer, you're probably giving that guy 10, 15, even 20% off on box purchases, right? And so it's a question of, it's a minimum, the MAP stands for minimum advertised price. That's what it stands for. Okay. So look, when we go to events and it's an event, I always tell, look, if the retailer wants to have an amazing event day and they want to do a deeper discount, they can do it. But they just can't put what that deeper discount is on that day. They can just post amazing prices, great prices, best deals ever. You know what I mean? You can do that. But but that's a one-off scenario. Look, and it also depends on how it's executed. Like TGS. TGS is the event that Abe doesn't smoke in. And guess what? He has a special deal that happens that's TGS, but it's also company brand wide. It's not on any one brand. It's on every manufacturer for everyone. And the only way you get to TGS is you have a ticket to go to TGS, whether it be a virtual or a real ticket.
Yep.
Just the same way as
New England a private Cigar, event. That's a little different.
Same way as you have New England Cigar Expo. The same way you have that. But those are one-off scenarios, right? So the point of MAP is to try to protect the integrity of the brand, so there's enough meat on the bones for the retailer to get behind the brand. It's not to protect the manufacturer, because like I said, in my perfect world, heck, if everybody sold all my cigars for 1 penny more than they bought them, you know how many fucking cigars I'd sell? I'd be making some real bank, for God's sakes. And that's why ultimately you see so many brands go down that road. That's why Oliva V's are now basically, Oliva V's are a 40 to 50% off brand almost everywhere you buy them, right? I mean, because in the end, the manufacturer's getting his cut. It's just taking the legs out from under the people that help to promote and support the brand.
No, and that makes total sense. It manages the brand, it manages the expectations for other shops to come in. It also keeps your pricing structure fairly level across the board, so every retailer doesn't get necessarily a one up on the other. Now, I will say, in the interest of Steve coming on tonight, and it just so happens it's literally right before Summer of Saka, so I had a question right now from Ira. Yes, I didn't announce it.
Can I ask a question? Are you like sponsored by Smoke In?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. There we go. I'm trying to understand. Man, Abe's getting a lot of love in this channel right now.
Well, Abe's watching too. But yes, Summer of Saka coming on. Abe, that's why this is called the Smokin' Studios at the Rocky Mountain Cigar Show.
Got it.
This is absolutely
I'm not paying attention. It's got the spinning Smoke In logo. I'm sorry, I didn't even notice that.
We are a Smokin' family here on this show. So in the interest of Summer of Saka coming up, I'm gonna do an unofficial first giveaway, and I don't think that Steve has any other shows coming up before Summer of Saka, so this will probably be the only giveaway.
Well, I'm sure I'll be doing one with Abe, right?
I'm talking about before Summer of Saka at a different show. So what I'm gonna do is I have one of these
Oh.
The Dunbarton logoed, what do you call them?
Canvases, the
Canvases.
warranty seal
DTT
canvases.
canvas. I have it in my possession. Don't have to wait for Steve to send it to me. It's in my possession. I think it's actually signed or something. I think it says on the outside of the box. I'm not sure. Don't hold me
If,
to that.
if it says
But
something on the outside of the box, it means I signed
let
it.
me check. Let me check. Let me check.
Yeah, because
I don't want to. I don't want to say it is and it isn't. Not signed on the outside of the box.
open the box and check it though. It may be.
Let me double check. Let me double check here.
Hey, I have a question.
Yes.
In the beginning of the show, you were talking about you're having to delay some birthday prizes. You've gotten all the stuff from us, correct?
Oh yeah, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
I want to make sure.
You send everything at the beginning of the year.
It's just easier that way.
100%. So
the concept of sending everything piecemeal.
it is not signed, but this
signed.
is what you are going to get. I have one to give away. All you got to do, I'm going to give everyone a couple minutes. Type in SOS into the drawing here, and we'll see who gets this shipped out to them, and I'll ship it out to you tomorrow, so you can have it.
They type SOS in the comments. Is that the way that works?
SOS in the comments. SOS doesn't have to be big, small, capital. Just SOS in the comments. We'll give everybody an opportunity. We've got quite a few people watching. Steve's always a huge draw in the show. Now, Steve,
17 people, right?
We got a lot more. It's crawling up. It's climbing up big. Now, Steve, I want to say to you.
So I'm watching this list go by, right? There's a lot of names I recognize, right?
Mm-hmm.
Noel and Chris and Stace and just a ton of people. Colin, Ian. Don't they ever? I can't understand how they don't get bored of listening to me because I say the same shit so many times.
But you don't on my show. I make sure I bring up new stuff.
I feel like I say the same stuff.
No, because the one thing I was going to ask you tonight was about tariffs, but I was like, during the show, like everybody's been talking about it. You've talked about it. By the way, if you want an absolutely fantastic explanation on tariffs, go watch the Oakland Tobacconist interview with PCA and Steve. He does an absolutely fantastic breakdown on tariffs, how he's going to have it apply to him, how others potentially would have it apply to them. I just didn't want to ask you the same old stuff. That's why I always try to bring up something new with you, because that's the way this show is. I try not to have a repeat, and I think that's why you like coming on, because I do give you new stuff. And one of the things I want to say while I'm waiting for everyone to finish the SOS for the giveaway of the Dunbarton canvas. It really meant a lot that you did the Mo Kaysen show with us this year. That was awesome.
I find him an interesting guy. Look, I'm not a celebrity guy for whatever reason. I never have been. Maybe it's because most of the ones I meet I end up typically disliking. But I find it really interesting because he's such a niche. He's a personality in a very niche industry, right? It's very, very unique, So yeah, Mo Kaysen. See, that's the type of guy that the Evan Darnells of the world should lock their claws into, right?
Well, I teamed up. Steve, I teamed up Abe.
That's something that Evan's really good at, right? Evan's a really good networker, and I'm a terrible networker. I've always been a bad networker. It's never been a strength of mine. Whereas a guy like Evan is really, really good at that.
Well, everybody watching the show, hopefully we can make something happen with Mo Kaysen at one of the Red Meat Lovers events or at TGS at some point in time. I know that Evan and Mo have been connected, so if anybody would like to see Big Mo Kaysen, who is a massive cigar guy, go back and watch the episode from March 6th, and it was absolutely fantastic. While you're there, reach out to Evan and let him know that you'd love to see Mo Cason at a Red Meat Lovers event, regardless if it's at TGS or not. I think that would be a ton of fun. So, without any other further ado here, let's go ahead and pick the winner. Now, this is a complete randomized winning, so there's no crying, no begging, no takebacks or returns. We have 35 entries. If you are not in the entry as of now, no crying. So, here we go. Let's go ahead and draw the winner. We've got Tex Southpaw is the winner. So Tex Southpaw, please reach out to me in DM and let me know where I can send this amazing Dunbarton canvas to.
You know what's funny is those canvases are one of the least expensive things I make.
Yet it is one of the things that I get the most requests for from people.
And here's the reason why: is because they're least expensive to make. They're a pain in the ass to ship. They cost a fortune to ship the damn things because of the length of them. They're really, really pricey to shipping. I mean, I would love to do a promo with a retailer for canvases. I mean, I have to order them special because we don't go through a lot of them because they are so difficult to ship. But they really, honestly, those canvases cost me less than a Saka Squatch statue.
Abe, he wants to do a canvas giveaway.
But Abe's practical. He's looking at that and he knows what a shipping nightmare that is. And it is. It's a shipping nightmare. I mean, that's the problem with the canvas. It's
well, Tex, you are our lucky winner. What would a Saka show be without some kind of a giveaway on the Rocky Mountain Cigar Show? Steve, your support, your friendship, your just straight pride to the cigar business is unmatched. And I strongly appreciate your support in the show and the belief in this show and what we provide here. I always love seeing when you watch the show and make comments because I know you don't do that often, so it always makes me happy. And I get giddy when I see you just the same way as you were like on the Mo Cason show. I'm actually geeking out here on this. So but from the bottom of my heart, Steve, you always have a home here. Dunbarton
look
Tobacco.
at Paul Ferris's question.
What?
Look at Paul Ferris's question. I just saw that roll by.
Oh, Paul. Okay, well, we can't end the show without explaining what Summer is. So Summer of Saka is the greatest magical, mystical cigar event ever put on. It is these two giants in the cigar industry, Abe DeBabna and Steve Saka, teamed up and said, how can we make our customers' lives that much better and offer
it's not true. Actually, Abe
deals.
did it. I'm riding in the backseat. I'm being dragged along.
So Paul, Summer of Saka is an entire 3 months dedicated to Dunbarton sales over at smokin.com. Super easy. I would strongly recommend you joining the Smokin social group to get some of the insider deals potentially that are there, as well as updates for Summer of Saka. But effectively, last year they gave away as one of the big grand prizes is a 6 foot Steve Saka. No, I'm just kidding. A 6 foot Saka Squatch and tons of other prizes.
So many prizes. Tons. I mean, I don't even know. Has he even announced what the prizes are?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay, I don't want to spill the beans, but
not yet.
He's got some pretty cool shit on deck this year.
Put it this way, Paul, if you're married, your wife might not like you for 3 months. I know friends that get deliveries to other houses to their neighbors, so their wives don't know exactly what they're spending. But Paul, go over to smokin.com. Tomorrow there's going to be an update for Summer of Saka. Check it out. It's going to be the biggest thing. Abe produces special exclusive swag that you get with each of
it's got to point now that people like
levels.
Plan their purchases. They actually have like strategies as to how they're going to buy, when they're going to buy, how much they're going to buy. It's really kind of crazy. It's become a whole thing. But the thing is, he's created a mechanism that adds that extra element to it, right? That makes it much more engaging. Because the reality is, the cigars are the same, right? So you can buy the cigars elsewhere, but it adds this extra pizzazz. It's something that you don't have to get. You know what I mean? So yeah, we have a yeah. No, I'm not. I've always been opposed to the bobblehead. I always,
Well,
I always that's how the Saka Squatch statue came to be. Is that I didn't want to do the bobblehead. Heck, that was the best news I got, man. The Chinese tariff deal.
yeah,
I
I
was.
saw that.
Let me say this: the Chinese tariff deal is it's such a big deal that we actually have been holding up the Saka cons from clearing customs, like literally saying no, don't. The ship The ship has actually swung around for an extra 3 days, waiting for the May 14th date, right? Because it isn't just the Saka cons that are in that cargo ship. It's a whole cargo. It's a container cargo ship full of all sorts of goods that we're going to get taxed 145%. And now that it's 30%, they've just been basically spinning in circles for 3 days because it's cheaper to keep the boat, just afloat and not entering the port. So yeah, but man, that was because I was afraid that this was going to be the first and the last batch of Saka cons ever because I can't 145% tariff on it. I just can't even do it. And it's like the math is so bad, it's ridiculously bad. I was like, oh my god. Well, why did I buy a whole container of those damn things?
Well, because we all want them, Steve. Okay, that's the thing. I gotta hand it to you. The stuff you pulled at TGS blaming Abe for the reason you weren't going to sell out was absolutely downright diabolically the best sales tactic ever. Because I was literally watching here, and I saw people
And
running
it
to the
worked.
background,
It
and
worked.
it sold out. And then Abe gets on the stage and goes, I can't believe I got blamed for that. Can you
Yeah.
believe me?
But here's the thing. That's where Abe is good. See, you have certain retailers that you can play off, right? That you can have that back and forth, and it's not because it's totally unplanned. It was a random thing. I'm just like, and look, a little risky, right? I'm in front of 1,500 of Abe's biggest fans, and I'm basically gonna dog him on stage, right? And so the fact that, but the thing is, he also knows how to respond to it, and he gets his little zinger in, and I get my zinger in, and it just comes off. It comes off natural because it is natural, and I think that's one of the reasons. And look, I also think it's one of the reasons why you ask why I think we do well is I think consumers they can sense the authenticity.
The camaraderie. Yeah.
Right. They can also sense the good natured back and forth, and they appreciate because the reality is that is how you talk with your friends, right? That's why it was
Oh,
so funny.
yeah.
It was so funny, and look, I don't want to get political, but you gotta admit when Trump's like there, yeah, my friend called, he said the fat shot, he's taking the fat shot. Look at the fat shot in France. He's in England. You get the fat shot for $85. It costs him $1,300 in Manhattan. And like, yeah, I've been taking the fat shot. And Trump's like, well, it's not working. You know what I mean? That's exactly the thing that a guy would say to his friend, right? Like, okay, he's got a billionaire guy. He's like, yeah, well, it ain't working, right? But that is that's the back and forth dialogue that you actually have with people that you like, that you're friends with, or they're your guys, and that's one of the things. And look, and I have that relationship with, Abe was one of the best, but I have that relationship with a few other retailers that you can have that back and forth with, and I think consumers they sense it just rings true, right? Because that's how they interact with their friends, right?
Yes.
So and look, and that's very nice. Whereas so much of it's always, well, we do the best, we buy the best this, and look, we do all those things, but that doesn't have to be said out loud all the time, right? because in the end, it's just going to depend on whether the consumer comes to that conclusion, no matter
Correct.
how many times you say it.
Correct.
But you do get a sense of the back and forth and the interaction and how it plays, whether it's something that's a manufactured thing versus something that's just really a genuine thing.
Well, it goes back to when you guys dressed as drag. I
Yeah,
mean, that's you don't do that with somebody that's just a simple friend. You do that
yeah,
with like a close buddy because 10 years from now, you guys are going to look at that picture and start ripping at each other for it, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. Yeah, look, and the other thing, look, we're 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 an industry that sometimes takes ourselves a little too serious.
I
You
agree.
can look, you can be serious about the product, but you don't have to be serious about everything. You know what I mean? You don't have to. There's room for that. Look, a lot of companies they stress out over it. They stress about what's their image, what's this, what message does this convey, boom, 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 and uh, I actually think the consumer, today's consumer, they're so over that manufactured authenticity that it just doesn't ring right with them. And I think that the more that you can have that feels genuine is the better it is. And the only way it can feel genuine today is if it is genuine, because we get slammed with so many advertising messages and so many market strategies and so many whatevers and this is and that. So boom, boom, boom. So I think it's one of the things that's helped a company. It's something that helps Abe at Smoke Inn. I think it's something that helps a company like Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. I think that I think it actually works to our advantage. And look, and it used to drive my partners crazy at Drew Estate because I would say all sorts of stupid shit like, I don't, I hate acid. Yeah, I'm president of the company, but I don't get it. Cigars are just like, why does anyone smoke this? Look, they found it offensive. Look, at the same time, if you were going to buy an infused cigar, acid was amongst the best. The construction was amongst the best. The quality of the materials were amongst the best. These were all true things. But in the end, it was like smoking potpourri. I I can't tell you that I think it's not for me. It's just not for me. Liga Privada for me. This is what I smoke. This over here, we do the best we can on it. We make a good product for the consumers that like that flavor profile, that like that extra sweetness. Boom, boom, boom. This is perfect for you. But even though I'm president CEO of the company, I'm not going to tell consumers, yeah, I'm smoking Cuba Cubas, because it's just a lie. I'm not smoking Cuba Cubas. It just isn't the case. And I think that that goes a long way with consumers when you just tell them the truth, even when the truth isn't attractive. Even when the truth is, guess what? There's going to be another price increase. Inflation last year was 6.2%. I'm paying more. This is going to go up. Hey, this is this product is this is that. And I also think it's really important for you to try to, like, we'll go back to the Abe example. The last TGS exclusive I did, the wrappers were all 7 years aged. They were fragile. I knew they were fragile. It made the blend. The blend didn't taste the same if you didn't use that 7 year aged wrapper on it. But the downside of that 7 year age wrapper is, hey, when you smoke it, some of these cigars are going to split. Some of these cigars are going to split on you when you smoke it. And just tell the consumer outright. Understand that when you buy this, that these wrappers are going to be this way. So they go into it understanding what the expectations are, right? Because the reality is that cigar doesn't taste the same without that wrapper. Now, I'm not saying that the newer wrapper doesn't make it taste good, okay, but to make that profile required to use that particular wrapper is what it required. But I think if you tell consumers front and you say this is the way it is, they they understand, they get it, they accept it,
This is the one you're talking about, right? The 28.
the L28s, yeah, the L28s.
See, we are a very much Dunbarton show. Absolutely. I am on the Dunbarton train in many ways. I hunt down your stuff. And I love these little this shop exclusives that you do, but I think I think this summer of Saka is just going to be out of this world, and I'm looking very forward to the update video for everything. So, when does it officially launch, Steve?
Um, I know that Abe sent me a text message, but I don't know whether it's for public, and I haven't looked. Oh, he said please approve for tomorrow, so I guess I got to watch it. He sent it to me at 7:36 tonight. So Abe, once I get off the podcast here with Ryan, I'll take a look at that and go.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for coming on. I know I say this to you often. I appreciate all the support. You're a legend in this, and I know you don't necessarily put yourself up as that, but I can tell you one of the reasons why everybody loves watching every show you're on is because you are who you are in person as you are in private. I mean, we've all sit down and had private discussions with you and public discussions with you. Those of us that have had those privileges, and
And
you are the same
asshole in
person.
person as I am online, yes.
Yeah, you are the same person. There's not a gimmick, there's no joke to you. So again, everybody, be on the lookout for the Summer of Saka video tomorrow. It's going to be a magical event with two giants in the industry. Support over at smokin.com and jump over and join the Smokin' Socialite group. Both Abe and Steve are absolute legends in this industry, and we absolutely love Steve. Dunbarton, like I said, is one of my go-to brands. In many cases, I start my mornings with Stillwells. I actually told Steve how much the Stillwell Star meant to me. It brought me back to the time of my granddad because he was a pipe smoker. And next thing you know, a huge box of pipe tobacco shows up, and I've got a lot of old Steve Saka pipe tobacco unopened. So it's a huge pleasure for me. Steve, you're a good friend, and thank you so much for coming on the show. Everybody obviously loves the show when you are lighting. Who lights up a cigar at the end of the show? Real cigar smokers that are going to continue to smoke after the show.
I'm an addict. I got to get my 10 in a day. I think I'm below a quarter right now. I think I have two more to go. It was that damn tractor. Fixing that tractor threw me off schedule.
So awesome. Well, everybody, be on the lookout for Summer of Saka information being released tomorrow. Join the Smokin' Socialite group for all the Summer of Saka information and updates. And until we see you again, smoke what you like, smoke all the fucking Dunbarton you can, and have a great rest of the week. Bye, everyone. Take care.